What the fuck? That's so I usually don't talk about movie news on my channel because A, movie news is constantly changing. B, I don't know, I feel like I'm not the best person to always cover that, and there's not always something interesting for me to say. I like listening and reading about it and stuff, and listening to other people talk about it and having discussions about it, but I don't really like personally making videos about this. But honestly, this was pretty big news. So this broke out like literally like an hour ago, less than that. Bob Iger is now back at Disney as president and CEO of the company. Chapek is gone. This is a pretty interesting development at Disney because if you've really been paying attention to what the actual hell has been going on in that company, it has not been good. Um, Recently, a lot of layoffs and firing started happening. And if you know anything about Bob Iger, he has the most shares of stock at Disney, like because of the company. And so, like, the health of the company and his money kind of go hand in hand. You know, if the company's not making money, isn't thriving, he's out money. And this dude, well, I think he really tried to step away from the company, but they did not do a good job with picking a replacement. The thing is, they picked a dude who was from Disney's parks departments, and they also picked a more conservative leaning dude, and that just was. And not that there's anything wrong with being that kind of like political ideology. The problem is when you're trying to be a company that's trying to appeal to most people, it's probably best to have a more progressive type person, or at least someone who, on the surface, represents those more progressive ideals, which, you know, Bob Chapek did not. And he has really done a lot to damage the health of the company, their employees, um, how people perceive the company, and I just kind of want to go into that for a minute. Really, I think his first big screw up was in 2020 when the Black Widow debacle happened. Basically, Scarlett Johansson went to go sue the company because what he had did is this is the story. Scarlett Johansson's lawyers at several points tried to get in contact with Disney over the fact that when they put the movie on streaming day and date, they were not going to pay her money and they wanted to renegotiate the contract. Disney refused to do that. That is Chapek saying, screw you to the talent. I think if you watch a lot of their Marvel movies, they seem a lot more messed with than usual. It came out in a report that Thor: Love and Thunder was actually going to be a longer movie, I believe, and then they cut it. I think that's just a rumor, but I mean, if you look at that movie and some of the set photos we have, pretty likely that's what happened. And so you have this dude who's coming here making all these decisions and not working with the talent. Here's the thing about Bob Iger. You cannot like his political ideology. You cannot like whatever. He knew how to work with talent and get shit done. And really, I know that people have this thing where they go, oh, Disney's too political, but they're really not that political as a company. Like, when Bob Iger was in charge, I think the first sign that people really grew to hate him was when he went out in Georgia and he protested an anti-abortion bill, which, like, that's his right as this company. Just give me 1 second to close that door. But like that's not that political as you would make it out to be. And then, now they've become associated with the gay agenda being injected into kids' entertainment, which if you think there is such thing, you can click right off now the video because there is no such thing, pretty obviously. But and this is clearly something that Chapek, as a CEO of the company, has tried to cause some harm to like that community of people. I don't think it was intentional, but it's clear like he's done a lot of screw ups. Like, so, especially on Pixar's department, that's another place where he screwed up talent relationships. They've had ideas for pitches for movies, and they've come out and voiced dissatisfaction for how much censorship goes on with the company. It's a lot, and I don't think under Bob Iger it would have happened as much as it did with Chapek. The way they handled the "Don't Say Gay" bill debacle in Florida was a pretty big nightmare, and um, and they're still never going to recover from that incident because people will be continuing to trash them for a very long time because that is the worst thing that one of the worst things that company has ever done. Um, and granted, um, I mean, because listen, I mean, this is so these are just all kind of things that he's done. He screwed up talent relationships by not working with these actors and directors and to get these projects through the finish line. Um, he's made he's made a lot of choices that have caused people to view them in a negative light, not just politically, but like just as a company in general. Um, he's a cuss. He's like the Zaslav of Warner Brothers, like the new CEO over there. He's the type of guy that goes in, I'm gonna axe this, I'm gonna axe that, cut budgets, cut this. That's kind of what he does, but on a lesser extent because Disney is a larger company and they can afford to make more than Warner Brothers and they aren't as bad at debt. So, but like, so Bob Iger coming back is the right call, and I think that it's really just I, I think it's just a sign when they put these people in charge. Be really freaking careful about how you do this. I don't even understand how these processes work to get these people in here. Because you look at David Zaslav, you're like, you're a cheap ass piece of shit who's canceling movies and writing off shows and taxes, screwing over all these creatives. Then you got Bob Chapek, who's just a piece of garbage human being, and a person who just like who you don't really know what his goal is, and it's just confusing, and it's just like, what are you doing? So I think Bob Iger coming back is the right course of action. I'm not a big the only my main issue with Bob Iger, if you want my honest opinion, was just that he didn't really fund new original projects. But I also can't blame him for doing that because people forget that for about a few years the 2010s, Disney actually tried some more original movies and ventures. They were trying to do the motion capture stuff like A Christmas Carol with Robert Zemeckis. That didn't work out. They tried the Lone Ranger movie. That didn't work out. They tried Tomorrowland and stuff. That didn't work out. A lot of these more original projects failed. So you see why Disney as a company went to what was working for them while this was going on was the remakes and all this stuff. And but in terms of what Bob Iger did, he gave us Star Wars, he gave us Marvel. And there are issues going on there, but I don't think they would be nearly as screwed up as they are right now, except for Star Wars. Star Wars is kind of what the hell is going on. Marvel seems like in a more of a shifty kind of like it's weird because you can tell something's wrong behind Marvel, but it's all behind closed doors type thing. Where like Star Wars is more out in the open of what the shit is going on. If you pay attention enough. So yeah, I don't know. This is just pretty interesting to learn that this dude is yeah. I kind of assumed that this was gonna happen. He was gonna get booted out. I just thought they'd get a new guy. I didn't think they'd bring back Bob Iger, but they did, and good for them because Chapek is a piece of human turd. He just is. Um. Wow, this is I don't know. I had a lot more to say about this than I thought I did. It's just good to see bad people when it comes to management and taking care of their workers' rights and things like that, and just actually see punishment for their actions. And I think you know these people have issues. I mean, I'm sure in the press and the media they're gonna play it off like it's no big deal, but Chapek was a piece of human garbage. Just the way he handled things was just ridiculous. And I think that at this time, it's just time that like I don't. It's kind of gonna be interesting because if you follow actual Disney for a while, Disney as a company tends to do this thing where they're really big for like a decade and then they kind of fall off a little bit for another decade. And so I think we're starting into that fall off decade, and then they're going to get back on top, which is going to be interesting. But it's also weird to say like, oh, Disney's kind of fallen off a little bit when they own Marvel, which like Black Panther made the amount of money that Black Adam did in the span of 2 weekends. Actually made over that. So that's how successful Marvel is. Like, think about that. And then you got like Star Wars, which sure there's nothing going on the line theatrically, but all this shows are very popular. Andrew's kind of been hit or miss in the ratings, but for the most part, I would still say it's pretty popular. And that doesn't even count like the minor stuff like Hocus Pocus 2 that did well for them. These things, these projects that they fund. And so like it's weird to say like Disney's fallen off a little bit because they are a company that can't always thrive and can't always get these things. But I think there's like, it's the factor of Disney Plus has spent so much money cranking into this content library, and now they're trying to do some other ventures. Like they're trying to get like Doctor Who, license that out because they're trying to figure out ways to make content without spending millions of dollars making content, if that makes sense. I think that's why the Disney Plus Marvel shows cut back, is because the idea of like, hey, if we cut back the amount of Marvel shows we're making, then we're not like spending millions of dollars for TV shows that aren't giving us the money in return type thing. And so that's a thing. And so yeah, it's a pretty interesting discussion of what's going on with Disney as a company. I'm very conflicted about like a lot of it. Um, I, I just knew that I knew from the moment that they announced this guy to be CEO, you were just like, this guy's gonna get booted out. He didn't know what he was doing, and I'm surprised it took them so long. Honestly, to see the Don't Say Gay bill happen the way it did, it's like, how did he not get booted out sooner? Because again, that's really damaged their reputation as a company. I mean, now it's become a running joke that every time they try to be inclusive or make some ad about being inclusive, they're like, well, you didn't support us when we were literally having our rights taken away by the governor of Florida. Like, it's become a running joke for a reason of that kind of stuff, right? This dude is like, trying to run this company and be like, we're inclusive. And then he's like, oh, by the way, have fun getting your rights taken away because we donated to him. That it's just it's a weird image for the company that he's really caused. And so like, I mean, I think that it's got a lot of damage, and it's gonna take, I think, at least another 10 years for people to move on from that and really forget that, because it's just such a damaging image.